Good afternoon. Happy Friday. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas if Christmas is a part of your practice. I hope you don't mind. I'm playing a little bit of music in the background today. I hope it's not too distracting. I sure do love my Christmas music. I'm not ready for the Christmas season to be over yet. I know for some of us, we like to call Christmas over on at midnight on the 26th, and that's definitely not me. I want to keep the tree up a while. I want to live the full 12 days of Christmas here. Today is the 27th. It is the day of the French hens. Um, you and I know, if you follow this space, I haven't been real faithful about posting content to this site throughout December. And there are a couple of reasons for that. Number one, I've just been enjoying my break too much. I've got a lot of stuff I'm doing, trying to relax while feeling good about how I'm spending the time. Honestly, I'm also still struggling a little bit with how to engage with this moment that we're living in. I feel like so much of the rhetoric, including the religious rhetoric of this moment, is so ugly and mean and sometimes cruel that I just have not felt much of a desire to engage with it. But it is my calling to do so. I am a scholar of religious rhetoric. And I appreciate the fact that you follow this site, and I want to dip my toe back into it a little bit today. How about this right here? That's a Christmas gift from my wife. You might recognize him. That's the teeny little super guy from Sesame Street back in the day. Love that gift. Perfect. First story I want to talk about, I'll talk about 3 stories. I'm not going to write about them. It's video only this week. I'll link to these stories down in the text of the post. I'm still thinking about the killing of Brian Thompson. It's an event not quite like any other I've experienced in my life. The rhetoric surrounding it. Brian Thompson, if you haven't really kept up with it, he is, as I said, the CEO of United Healthcare. And his killing was directly connected. There's evidence it was directly connected with some of the unjust policies of United Healthcare. Some of the things being said, including in religious environs, it's interesting to me. The rhetoric around the manhunt for him and the level of intensity and manpower that went into finding his killing is interesting to me. I've linked this week to an article. It's a couple weeks old now, but it's by Tyler Huckabee. I happen to think he's one of the finest writers, essayists that we have going right now. If I'm not mistaken, Tyler was a classmate of mine at the Moody Bible Institute. He wouldn't know my name, but if I'm not mistaken, he's the same individual that was a classmate of mine. And I just think he has some really, really insightful things to say. He contrasts some of the response to Thompson's killing with the killing of Jordan Neely in the New York City subway system a couple weeks ago. Do check that out. My second story this week involves some violence that's broken out in Nigeria. Again, this is a couple of weeks old. I'm a little bit behind. But some violence that's broken out in Nigeria that some are connecting to the schism of the United Methodist Church over treatment and acceptance of LGBTQ plus individuals in the United Methodist Church. I think more than anything, it's a reminder to me of how a lot of times these issues are talked about as issues. And we don't really pay attention to how our rhetoric sometimes leads to violence that's unseen. Our rhetoric ripples out. I think we know that, but it's just an example of that worth pointing out. So do follow that story as well. My third story is my favorite of the week, not so much because of the story itself, but because of what lies behind it. I think my third story is, again, we're a few weeks old here, but Pete Hegseth's tattoos. Pete Hegseth is Trump's nominee for Secretary of Defense, and he has some tattoos throughout his body. Um, some tattoos that he says are most connected with his faith, but are also connected to some movements of white supremacy and movement towards what we could call a crusader orientation towards his faith. Boy, that really raises a couple of issues in itself, doesn't it? The rhetoric of crusade and how it exists in evangelical and evangelical adjacent American Christianity. That's interesting. I taught at a school with Crusader as its mascot. Kind of an ugly image, isn't it? But then there's tattoos and body art and the rhetoric of body art. I think it's been kind of under-examined. For a lot of us, we remember how we grew up in evangelical contexts where tattoos were thought of still as evil and sinful. And I think a lot of us have moved past that. Even a lot of our institutions have really moved past that idea. But because that's where our minds have been fixated, this idea of sinful, not sinful, not a lot of attention has been paid to the rhetoric that's being shared through body art and tattoos, particularly in evangelical and evangelical adjacent settings. I think somebody could make a fascinating career out of studying the rhetoric of body art in evangelical and evangelical adjacent settings in American Christianity. What the meaning and rhetoric of the tattoos itself is. The relationship of using body art as rhetoric and how sometimes it's just self-rhetoric, something for oneself and not for anybody else. I think the rhetoric sometimes, of faith leaders deliberately getting tattoos as a way of connecting with people around them. I think all of this is very fascinating. I might try to set up a panel for 2025's RCA about body art and religious rhetoric. I think that would be fascinating. If you have ideas about that, let me know and I'll try to include you on that panel. Now to our poem for this week. I'm going to bring for you today a poem. Bear with me just a moment. Bear with me, let me get my music back up and going here. A poem today from Helen Steiner Rice, The Story of the Christmas Guest. This was first heard by me, recorded by Johnny Cash simply as The Christmas Guest, and I've left a link below to his recording of this poem. I hope you enjoy it. This music, again, by the way, is by the Philadelphia Brass Ensemble. Here it is, Helen Steiner Rice's The Story of the Christmas Guest. It happened one day at December's end. Some neighbors called on an old-time friend, and they found his shop so meager and mean, made gay with 1,000 boughs of green. And old Conrad was sitting with face ashine, and he suddenly stopped as he stitched the twine, and he said, "My friends, at dawn today, when the cock was crowing the night away, the Lord appeared to me in a dream, and he said, I'm coming your guest to be. So I've been busy with feet astir, strewing my shop with branches of fir. The table is spread and the kettle is shined, and over the rafter the holly is twined. And now I'll wait for my Lord to appear, and listen closely so I will hear his steps as he nears my humble place, and I'll open the door, and I'll look on his face." Then his friends went home and left Conrad alone, for this was the happiest day he had known. For long since his family had passed away, and Conrad had spent many a sad Christmas day. But he knew with the Lord as his Christmas guest, this Christmas would be the dearest and best. So he listened with only joy in his heart. With every sound he would rise with a start, and look for the Lord to be at his door, like the vision that he had had a few hours before. So he ran to the window after hearing a sound, but all he could see on the snow-covered ground was a shabby beggar whose shoes were torn, and all his clothes were ragged and worn. But old Conrad was touched, and he went to the door, and he said, "Your feet must be cold and sore. I have some shoes in my shop for you, and I have a coat to keep you warmer too." So with grateful heart the man went away, but Conrad noticed the time of day, and he wondered what made the dear Lord so late, how much longer he'd have to wait. Then he heard another knock, and he ran to the door, but it was only a stranger once more, a bent old lady with a shawl of black, and a bundle of kindling piled on her back. But she asked only for a place to rest, a place that was reserved for Conrad's great guest. But her voice seemed to plead, "Don't send me away. Let me rest for a while this Christmas day." So Conrad brewed her a steaming cup and told her at the table to sup. After she had left, he was filled with dismay, for he saw the hours were slipping away. The Lord had not come as he said he would, and Conrad was sure he had misunderstood. When out of the stillness he heard a cry, "Please help me and tell me, where am I?" So again he opened his friendly door and stood disappointed as twice before. It was a child who had wandered away and was lost from her family on Christmas Day. Again Conrad's heart was heavy and sad, but he knew he could make this little girl glad. So he called her in, and he wiped her tears, and he quieted all of her childish fears. Then he led her back to her home once more, and he entered his own darkened door. He knew that the Lord was not coming today, for the hours of Christmas had all passed away. So he went to his room and he knelt down to pray, and he said, "Lord, why did you delay? What kept you from coming to call on me? I wanted so much your face to see." Then softly in the silence a voice he heard, "Lift up your head, I have kept my word. 3 times my shadow crossed your door. 3 times I came to your lowly door. I was the beggar with bruised cold feet. I was the woman you gave something to eat. I was the child on the homeless street. 3 times I knocked, 3 times I came in. Each time I found the warmth of a friend. Of all the gifts, love is the best. I was honored to be your Christmas guest." Well, friends, once again, this has been 3 Points in a Poem. It's been a joy to have you as my guest today, talking through some stories, and I'll be here again with you again next Wednesday, I should hope, Lord willing. In the meantime, what more is there to say but Merry Christmas. Thanks so much for all the good you bring into the world.